1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 1, 1. Test. 1, 2. Mizmor LeDavid Bnot She'arbitzeni Amei Menuchoto Dinachaluni Nafshi Yoshovev ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו. גם ילך דגן, צל מוות לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, דשנת ושמת ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I am not in want. He makes me lie down in the green meadows. He leads me beside refreshing streams. He restores my life. He guides me to righteous paths. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no harm, for He is with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You spread a feast for me in the presence of my foes. You perfume my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The book of Psalms, there are 150 Psalms, tells us, when I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars that you set in place, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? What are people that you pay attention to them? In other words, in the vast universe in which our earth is a mere speck of what is the value of a human life? What is the importance of a human being? And if there is a God, what kind of attention can he or she shed upon our insignificant corner of creation? But the psalmist doesn't leave it at that. The psalmist goes on to say, yet you have created human beings but little lower than angels, and adorned them with a glory and majesty. You have made them masters over your handiwork, laying the world at their feet, sheep, oxen, and wild beasts too, the birds of heaven, the fish of the sea, and whatever travels in the paths of the sea. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name throughout the earth. Indeed, there is a majesty to human life, which is quite unlike that of any other part of creation. While it is true, as the prophet Isaiah says, that the fullness of all the earth is God's glory, it is humanity seemingly that has been appointed to be the crown of creation. And here's how they explain it. Even the angels in heaven, who are supposed to be closer to God than we are, in a sense, they are more distant than we are. For angels, according to our rabbis, have no freedom of choice. Human beings alone have been gifted with this divine characteristic of choice. We are here this afternoon to say goodbye to Dr. Samuel Stedman, Shmuel ben Shloime Halevi Vesara, husband to Faye for 67 years, father to Cheryl Sloshar, married to Lanny, and Neil Stedman, grandfather to Jordan, Carly, Avery, and Ashley. He was predeceased by his parents, Solomon and Sarah, his sisters, Ruth Gerstein and Clara Stedman. Samuel passed away at the age of 92 on Tuesday, August the 7th. The Hebrew equivalent date is the 26th of Av, the year 5778. From a challenging early childhood, Samuel made choices that had a profound consequence in his life. So, presenting a eulogy is praised by our rabbis as one of the most revered mitzvahs, good deeds that we can do. The reason is that the person we are honoring is not here to thank us. It is a purely unselfish act of kindness. So today we are very fortunate that Jordan, Carly, Avery, and Ashley, I'd like to invite you all to come up at this time, will share their memories with us at this time to learn a little bit of the book of the life of Samuel Stedman. Let me just adjust the mic because you're taller than I am. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here to honor our grandfather. I wasn't expecting to be back in front of a Winnipeg Jewish community crowd so quickly after a public speaking appearance a few weeks ago. But both Zaid and I have known this moment was coming for quite a while now, and in fact, we had been discussing it for quite some time, him and I, when we were in private. And he had long made his wishes clear to me. My grandfather he was a strong and a proud man. He was an athlete and a competitor. He found joy in life through physical activity and relationships with his friends and family. He made it abundantly clear to me that he never wanted to be in a situation where he didn't have his mental faculties, or as he would say, had to stare at four walls all day. And so it brings me great peace and happiness to know that despite him having lost his ability to engage in a lot of his favorite activities over the years, that he continued to have a life that he considered worth living right until the very end. In fact, as of 2 weeks ago, at the age of 92, depending on which of his two birth certificates you believe, that Zaid was exercising 5 times a week. He was complaining that the Simpkins Center staff would only let him bicycle for 10 minutes a day when he claimed he could easily do 20 minutes. He was still going out for walks and enjoying fresh air and some sunshine, as he would say, and going out for meals with Neil or anyone who could take him out whenever he had the opportunity. Leading up to my last visit, just a month ago, he still had the date of my arrival in Winnipeg memorized. And he beamed from ear to ear when I would walk into his room. So he continued to live life on his own terms as much as possible, right until the end. In reflecting back on my lifetime of memories with Zaid, they clustered around certain themes and lessons that I learned from him. The first, as the rabbi sort of alluded to, Zaid's life followed the arc of a hero's journey, and he set a strong example of how to overcome the odds and achieve great things. As the rabbi mentioned, or not quite, Zaid's mother passed away when he was only 3 years old, and he grew up in an orphanage in Winnipeg, a Jewish orphanage, in the 1930s until he was 15 years old. He didn't like to talk much about those years, which I think was at least in part because the children that lived there were somewhat in survival mode. There were stories that Zaid used to have to hide food in his pockets so that others wouldn't steal it. But despite coming from that type of disadvantaged upbringing, my Zaid excelled in both academics and sports. He obtained a full scholarship to play hockey at the University of Michigan and went on to win the first NCAA Division I hockey championship that was held in 1948 with the Michigan Wolverines. And he was selected as a prestigious All-American hockey team player and a winner of the varsity letters back in those years. Upon his triumphant return to Winnipeg, he went on to marry the hottest Jewish woman in the Winnipeg Jewish community at the time, my grandmother Faye. And from what Bub tells us, he had a lot of charisma, or maybe it was chutzpah. When they first met on the pier at Winnipeg Beach, he tossed her a nickel and told her to call him when she grows up. A few months later, Faye finally went on a first date with him, and he asked him to marry her right there on the spot on the dance floor. After winning the hearts of Faye and her parents, they sent him to the University of Alberta School of Dentistry, and he proceeded to set up a successful practice in Winnipeg for the next 40 some odd years, practicing until he was in his 80s. Him and Faye raised two pretty good kids as well, my mother, Cheryl, and Uncle Neil. So Zaid's hero's journey really impacted me and my journey in life as well, teaching me to dream big and apply to big schools and literally go for the gold. Following his footsteps, I also applied to go to the University of Michigan for college. However, as those of you who played A3 hockey with me know, there was no hockey scholarship in my path. But a few years later, I did manage to get an academic gold medal from the University of Winnipeg and an admission ticket to Yale Medical School. Zaid inspired me to become a professional, and I endeavored to practice and stay active as long as he did. And while those hockey genes unfortunately didn't get passed on to me, he still taught me a lot about sportsmanship and being a gentleman. For many years, golf at the Glendale Country Club was a staple of his life and our relationship. It was also a great example of how he expressed his love and generosity to me. He bought me my first set of clubs when I was only 8 years old and would teach me to swing in the backyard. He paid for my memberships, he bought me lessons, and I knew I could always eat on his Glendale account. Even when I was just out there with my buddies. Although he was competitive in golf tournaments, and some knew him as a sandbagger, he always stressed to me that golf was really just about getting out there and enjoying and being together. That was what was important. Whether it was with his cronies or me or Neil or Avery, it was just the key thing was that we were all together and just out there having fun. And of course, the other important thing was that after the round, we would eat a cheeseburger and fries and a Diet Coke in the can. Very important. So the way that Zaid approached golf from the perspective of joy was a lesson that carried forward into other areas of life as well. Regardless of what kind of serious stuff I was up to throughout my extended education, rather than asking me questions and grilling me about the nitty-gritty of school, Zaid would always just ask me what I was doing for fun, whether I was going out with my buddies tonight or last weekend, occasionally whether I was going out with any ladies. And he would be sure to shtip me $20 every Friday night to make sure I had a little cash in my pocket to make sure I could have fun. When I would tell him about school or work, he would just always say, I know I don't have to worry about you as long as you're enjoying. That's the most important thing. And he modeled that joy with his huge ear-to-ear smile all the time, and certainly when we were together. the amazing thing was that it didn't matter what we were doing, often just sitting beside each other, watching hockey if we were lucky, or a riveting round of golf if we weren't so lucky. All that mattered is that we were together. And perhaps it is through this lens of joy that I can make sense of the quite hilarious contradiction of my grandfather as a dentist with a special passion for doling out candy and chocolate to kids. You see, when I was a child, we would sneak down into the basement. He would usher me down behind the bar, pull out his stash of candy and chocolate, before dinner, mind you, and feed it to me and then tell me not to tell anyone. Of course, I was only a few years old, and I would come back upstairs, and we would sit down at the dinner table, and I would, in front of everyone else, I would look around, look at him, and then just go, shh. Of course, giving it all away. I found out last night that this wasn't just a new habit he developed with me. He had been sneaking donuts to my cousin Lisa Odwack on the way to school when she was a child for years prior, and had been swearing her to secrecy as well.
This story of Zaid always wanting to give to others is an example of the loving generosity he showed as a father figure. Some of our mom's fondest memories of Zaid are how he comforted her and would stay with her as a child when she couldn't fall asleep. Zaid played a very important role in Mom's academic and professional careers, supporting her and encouraging her to excel, from helping her with homework in grade school to later in dental hygiene, helping her practice her tooth carving. They then worked alongside each other as colleagues, with the understanding that it was our mom's practice just as much as it was Zaid's. Ultimately, Zaid laid the foundation for mom's success and her passion for contributing to her profession, still to this day. Zaid also had a very special relationship with our father, Lanny. When he first moved here from New York, Dad actually stayed at Bob and Zaid's with Mom. Zaid didn't know what to make of Dad, as he was quite a free-spirited child of the 60s. However, they soon became close as friends and even developing a father-son relationship. The two of them would have very intense debates about current events, which to others might have seemed like arguments, but they truly respected each other's opinions. Even when Zaid's health declined up until recently, he could always rely on Dad to make him laugh, and he would let out quite a lot of joy from seeing Dad. Dad has great memories of the many Sundays that Zaid came over to watch football. In his heyday, Zaid could wolf down 2 corned beef sandwiches and had a very voracious appetite. Dad and Zaid really bonded when Zaid lost his driver's license. Dad would pick him up from work and take him to run his errands. This included getting lottery tickets and going to buy groceries, which most importantly had to include buying grapes. Speaking of grapes, this was a very constant theme over the last year for our family, because Zaid was always asking us to bring him more grapes as well as Scotch mints. We could barely keep up with how quickly he went through them. And this is an example of how our Zaid really had a strong sense of what he wanted and what he liked, and was not afraid to express and ask for these things, but ultimately he was a true gentleman in all his interactions. We learned the importance of being polite from Zaid. And we would like to thank Melba, who has been with our family for so many years and always called Zaid Doc. She was a savior to Bub in the last few years, helping look after him and even accompanying my Zaid and I to a doctor's appointment, helping him walk, and just being there by his side. The staff at the Simpkins Center also loved him, and he often expressed his appreciation for the care he was receiving. He never missed a chance to say thank you, to the point that he would often repeat himself and say thank you, thank you, thank you. Zay was grateful for every single visit, yet if I couldn't make it to see him, he was very understanding and would say that it was important for me to do what I had to do as long as I at least called him. These phone calls regularly ended with Zaid saying, "Have a great day," even when it was already nighttime, or telling me to have a great weekend, even if it was Monday. Zaid, you will forever be in my heart, and I love you very much.
The last lesson that I wanted to share that Zaid taught me, perhaps somewhat surprisingly, but most importantly, is about love. Not necessarily about romantic love, but about a deeper, truer kind of unconditional love. As many of you know, my Zaid and I shared a very, very special relationship. It was unlike any other that I've ever had or any other that I will have in the future. We shared an unspoken connection, a deep love and respect that transcended the need for words or any particular actions. It was a profound kind of knowing, sometimes expressed just with a simple nod of the head, or sometimes by holding hands or just resting a hand on each other's knee as we sat beside each other. It was an even and steady relationship. I can't even think of a single time in our entire lives when we were at odds or felt distant from one another. And so now I and the rest of my family are faced with a physical distance from Zaid. And this makes me sad. Because I will miss seeing his smile and sitting with him, and I'll miss hearing his voice on the phone. I'll miss taking him to the park, and I'll miss taking him out for his walks. And I'll just miss his presence because it's all I've ever known. I've never known life without him. But he knew, and I know, that this deep-seated unconditional love that we shared will live on in my heart for the rest of my life. And as a result, it will continue to have a beautiful ripple effect on generations to come as I endeavor to transmit that to the people I encounter in my life, to my future children. It is in this sense that I understand how love is truly eternal. Zaid, may you rest in peace and abundance in a place where there's always sweet and sour sauce on the side and soft drinks only come in the can.
It is our honor to share with you some thoughts and memories about our Zaid. And on behalf of our father, Neil, we would also like to speak about their relationship with one another. It's hard to put a label on the relationship, but our dad and Zaid were much more than just father and son. They spent nearly every day together, developing an extraordinary closeness. From picking up Zaid every morning on the way to work, to sharing DeLuca sandwiches for lunch, these two shared a working space where they both practiced their professions for 30 years with my dad in the office. They were truly inseparable. They were best friends.
They both shared a tremendous passion for sports and for competition. Our Zaid was not only an accomplished hockey player, but also an avid golfer, curler, and was apparently somewhat of a backyard sports professional. Zaid and Dad didn't grow up with any brothers, so they were always each other's sparring partners. Throwing the football or baseball in the backyard was somewhat of a Stedman ritual, and it was the envy of other kids in the neighborhood. Zaid wouldn't pull any punches either. He wanted our dad to always be the best, and pushed him to excel in both academics and sports. Talking to our dad, there are so many memorable stories, but some of his favorite memories are remembering the 2-on-2 football games they used to play at Winnipeg Beach against his cousins Sid and Jeff. But whenever there was a flag on the play, Sam always sided with his son. It was always interference on Jeff, no interference on Neil. This favoritism bled into his time spent as a hockey coach. Zaid was highly competitive, even as a coach, and sometimes to a fault. When Neil's team was winning games by massive leads, Zaid still wanted his kid on the ice to keep scoring goals, despite the scoring deficit and the reaction of other frustrated parents. One game in particular, Sam let Neil go on to score 11 goals. But we should note that the 11th goal had an asterisk beside it because it ricocheted off Jay Averback's head. Sorry, Jay. Our dad and Zaid loved each other, but it wasn't perfect. They got on each other's nerves. They knew exactly what made each other tick. That's what made them so close. They knew each other so well, they'd often predict each other's actions and reactions and words. They loved each other maybe more than their words could express.
As a dentist, our Zaid was loved by so many of his patients, and he loved them and his profession in return. He was always attending dentistry seminars to continue his education, something he was very passionate about. By the time Zaid was ready to retire, he was into his 80s. We both hope that our careers and our love for others will inspire us for that long. Zaid was also an avid sports fan, maybe more than just a fan. We always remember watching NFL games, rooting for our family's favorite team, the New York Giants, which Zaid passed along to our dad and also shared with our Uncle Lanny and the rest of us. I catch myself watching Giants games on Sunday now. It was hard to get the boys away from the TV, even when Bub's delicious baking was fresh out of the oven. To say that NFL Sundays will never be the same for the Stedman family is an understatement. No matter how many times our dad came runner-up in the Glendale Club Championship,
8 times. Counted yesterday. Sorry.
Our Zaid was always very proud. He would ask our dad, "What did you shoot?" And whatever the answer, he always grinned and gleamed with pride.
Golf was a big part of our family, and some of my earliest memories are actually golfing with Zaid at the #1 Stedman stomping ground, Glendale. It was a place that we could just relax and breathe and enjoy ourselves, despite me always trying too hard to impress him or my dad, and him trying to buy me too many corned beef sandwiches and Diet Cokes in the can. I'd always look over at him, and he would just be shaking his head. He'd say with a huge grin, "What a shot," even when he couldn't even see it. Playing with him, my dad, and Jord will always be some of my most cherished memories with him. It was always really special when the four of us could just get together. They say sports is much more than just a game, and it's true. It's the father-son relationships that are built, the life lessons learned, and the ability to overcome failure that drives every player to succeed. There's a special resilience that comes from sport, and our Zaid had it. He knew that in sports and in life, you never give up even when you're down, and the odds are stacked. I think this truly embodies the spirit of our Zaid. Our Zaid was a very warm grandfather. He had such a calm and gentle demeanor, and he was so proud of his kids and grandkids for all of their accomplishments. Every Friday night, we used to walk into their house on Niagara and were greeted by Zaid's giant smile. He'd always jump up off the couch with his arms wide open and grab your face for a huge kiss on the cheek, or sometimes a wet one on the lips with Bub in the background saying, "No, not on the lips, please."
Zaid was proud of his family, his children, and his grandchildren. In his final days, he would call Bub and say, "Hello, Faye. This is your loving husband, Sam, calling." Bub and Zaid were married for 67 years. It's true that love can last a lifetime. Zaid didn't have a family growing up like the one he made for himself, so he cherished us. He loved hearing about our lives, whatever we were doing. Both of our grandparents were extremely supportive of us. We are so fortunate to have had so many wonderful years and memories with our Zaid. Sleep well, Zaid, we love you.
So you got a few pages of Samuel's Book of Life. Just a few. Enticing. Do you know, his life could have turned out differently had he made different choices. The hard beginning in the orphanage, where he had to really learn to be competitive and fight even for his food. What the family didn't say is that he became very popular, both as a person and obviously as an athlete. He was very competitive, right from the beginning. Rather than hardening him, it did the opposite. It provided him with the ability to make choices, to learn to make the choices that would make him and those around him better. You know, you heard that he met his wife at Winnipeg Beach as they were passing each other, and he flipped this coin at her and said, "When you get older, please call me." When I heard that yesterday, my first word that came out of my mouth was, boy, did he have chutzpah. That was the first choice. Maybe it was chutzpah. Then when he got back to Winnipeg, a little while later, he tried to contact her. But all he had was a phone number that was actually her cousin's. She didn't live there. He phoned, and someone else told him, no, she doesn't live there. She lives over here. With that knowledge, I'm going to use the word, he pestered her until they had a date. She wasn't too thrilled with this guy. Can you imagine how forward he was? They finally had a date, and as you heard, that first date, he held her, as she said yesterday, very, very close and asked her to marry him. Eventually they did. Choice. That choice produced a loving marriage of 67 years with respect for each other and, of course, love for each other. That marriage produced children where he worked hard to be the best dad that he never had. The best Zayda that he never had. After he became a dentist, what was his choice? To be the best dentist care provider to his clients. So much so that sometimes he sacrificed choices to be with the family to make sure that he looked after his clients. He was extremely competitive with his son. If his son got 2 goals in the car, he should have gotten 4. If you got 10 goals, you should have gotten number 11. Never mind, he went over somebody's head. With his daughter, he persisted that she really pursue her academic education. What Jordan didn't share with you was that Zeta encouraged him to play golf. And he was pretty good, I'm told. Now, I'm not sure whether these are the words that Zeta used, but I think at one point he said to him, you know, if you had focused on the golf along with your studies, you could have been somebody. So it just shows the kind of support this man offered to his family, the people that he knew, his friends. And right till the end, even though his life could have been a lemon, what did he do? He made wonderful lemonade. So really what we can take away from this is that, yeah, we have choices. And sure, life's not easy, it's tough. Maybe we can take an example. That rather than to make the choice of saying, oh, why did this happen to me? Turn it into the lemonade, like Sam did. I'd like to invite you to rise at this time for the recital of the El Malrachamim, the memorial prayer, that many of our rabbis and clergy call the prayer of the soul. The name is included in this as well. So I will chant it in Hebrew and then repeat it in English. El Malrachamim שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וזכורים, כזוהר הרקיע המזכירים, את נשמת שמואל בן שלמה הלוי ושרה, שהלך לעולמו. Vagan Eden Temunuchato Anna Bal Harachamim Astirach Basedekenophechololomi Utzror Bitzror Achamit Nishmatom Adonai Hunachalatom Vayanuach Bashalom al Mishkavo Venomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence. Among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Samuel Stedman, Shmuel ben Shlomo Halevi Vesara, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite the pallbearers to proceed to the back of the chapel, to the foyer, and take their place alongside Sam. I would also like to invite the family to also proceed now to their transportation. A few announcements. Shiva will be observed at 323 Wellington Crescent, apartment 1406, on Wednesday evening from 7 to 9 p.m., on Thursday evening from 7 to 9 p.m., and on Friday afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m. Davening will be at 7:30 on Wednesday evening and Thursday evening. Now, for those of you who are going to be following us to the cemetery, which is located on the corner of Armstrong and Main, I'd like to ask you to make sure that you have your flashing lights on in the car. And this is the important part. Please, please, please observe all traffic signals. we no longer have the privilege of going through a red light because we are part of a procession. We will wait at the cemetery, make sure everyone gets there. And again, the address is the corner of Armstrong and Main. Now, following the interment at the cemetery, the Sheret Setting Cemetery, by the way, everyone is invited to the Herzliya Synagogue at 620 Brock for a gathering and a meal to honor Samuel. Here's where I would like your help. It is customary at these gatherings afterwards that we, all of us, look after the family. So I would like to ask you to wait until the family gets there. Please make sure that when they come in, they are seated. And we make sure that they have either a cup of coffee or something to eat. We all want to pass on our condolences to the family right there and then. So my suggestion is make sure that they're looked after, that they have something to eat, something to drink. We've been outside, it's quite hot. And after they've done that, absolutely, pass on your condolences at the time. I've seen situations where the family is standing there for half an hour with people passing on all their condolences because everybody wants to do it. And that's a wonderful thing. You should do that. But make sure that they're looked after first as far as food is concerned. And then absolutely do that. And also, you heard some of these stories here. I didn't get into some of the ones we were sharing. It's a perfect opportunity to share some of the other stories. As the family said yesterday, as we finished, it truly was a celebration of life. He celebrated it. I think it's up to us to continue to celebrate his memory in the best possible way. I see the doors are open at the back. You're all invited to now form 2 lines as we now say our final farewell to Samuel. Thank you very much for coming.